All right, everyone, welcome back to RJK English. This is our Facebook page. Make sure to visit us, and I'll have my videos there. You can comment, I can explain anything you want. All right, let's continue, and we might be able to finish this chapter. So, we are in a different section of Siddhartha, where Siddhartha is older, and it's not going to have as much action in it. But there are going to be some very interesting things to analyze. Then Siddhartha had spent the night at his house with dancers and wine, had pretended to be superior to his companions. He no longer was superior, which he no longer was. He had drunk much wine, and late after midnight he went to bed, tired and yet agitated, nearly in tears in despair. He's in a deep depression right now. In vain did he try to sleep. His heart was so full of misery, he felt he could no longer endure it. He was full of nausea, which overpowered him, like a distasteful wine, or music that was too sweet and artificial, or like the too sweet smile of dancers, or the too sweet perfume of their hair and breasts. But above all, he was nauseated with himself, with his perfumed hair, with the smell of wine from his mouth, with the soft, flabby appearance of his skin. Like one who has eaten and drunk too much and vomits painfully and then feels better, so did the restless man wish he could rid himself with one terrific heave of these pleasures, of these habits, of this entirely senseless life. Only at daybreak and at the first signs of activity outside of his townhouse did he doze off and had a few minutes of semi-oblivion, a possibility of sleep. During that time he had a dream. So oblivion is where you don't exist. And sometimes when we sleep, in a way, we don't exist. He's experiencing something that we can experience during our lives when we're living in a way that we don't like. So, again, we don't want to take this story as this is the way we have to live life, right? This is Hesse's version of what the Buddha is. And he's going somewhere with it, but we don't have to be just like Siddhartha. But all of us have experienced, or maybe I have, a time in life where we felt we couldn't escape from the way we've been living, from what we've made our lives. And we wish we could get rid of it, and yet we're attached to it. Why? Because we're attached to life. We have to live. Sometimes these are critical moments, and often we need a counselor during that time, you know. So he's having a dream. Kamala kept a small, rare songbird in a small golden cage. It was about this bird that he dreamt. This is called an it cleft. So he dreamt about this bird. Well, they switched it around to make emphasis. It was about this bird that he dreamt. He dreamt about this bird. They were switching it to an it. It was about this bird that he dreamt in order to emphasize that this bird was the thing he dreamt about. This bird, which usually sang in the morning, became mute, and as this surprised him, he went up to the cage and looked inside. The little bird was dead and lay stiff on the floor. He took it out, held it a moment in his hand, and then threw it away on the road. And at the same moment he was horrified, and his heart ached as if he had thrown away, with this dead bird, all that was good and of value in himself. Awakening from this dream, he was overwhelmed by a feeling of great sadness. It seemed to him that he had spent his life in a worthless and senseless manner. He retained nothing vital. Nothing vital means critical. Your innards, your guts, your heart, these are called your vitals. You need them in order to live. They are critical for your life. He retained nothing vital, nothing in any way precious or worthwhile. He stood alone like a shipwrecked man on the shore. Sadly, Siddhartha went to a pleasure garden that belonged to him, closed the gates, sat under a mango tree, and felt horror and death in his heart. He sat and felt himself dying, withering, finishing. Gradually, he collected his thoughts and mentally went through the whole of his life from the earliest days which he could remember. When had he really been happy? When had he really experienced joy? Well, he had experienced this several times. He had tasted it in the days of his boyhood, when he had won praise from the Brahmins, when he far outstripped his contemporaries, when he was better than all of them, when he excelled himself at the recitation of the holy verses, in argument with the learned men, when assisting at the sacrifices. Then he had felt in his heart, a path lies before you, which you are called to follow. The gods await you. This is like, there's a song by Bon Iver called Holocene. And I don't know what Holocene means, but if you break it apart, it means hollow scene. Sometimes we say that a scene is like if there's a music scene, that means there's a group of people that are playing music, there's shows, there's a music scene. Well, there's a hollow scene. It means there's not a lot of life there. And in this, he says, he talks about going to Milwaukee on his own, and he thought he was great. And then he has this line, and at once I knew I was not magnificent. And I think all of us have to experience this in life. Siddhartha is realizing he loved being better than others. He is competitive. This doesn't mean he's terrible, but that is what he loves. He loves being great at things. And he thought that, of course, because he was so great, something amazing was there for him in life. And he went out seeking it. He remembers being happy with that. And what did he find? He's disappointed in himself. He's disappointed. But let's see what else he remembers. And again, as a youth, when his continually soaring goal had propelled him in and out of the crowd of similar seekers, when he had striven hard to understand the Brahman's teachings, when every freshly acquired knowledge only engendered a new thirst, then again, in the midst of this thirst, in the midst of his efforts, he had thought, onwards, this is your path. You're going to do something amazing. I'm sorry, I said that. Onward, this is your path. You're going to do something amazing. This is how I interpret it. He had heard this voice when he had left his home and chosen the life of the Samanas. And again, when he left the Samanas and when he had left the Samanas and gone to the perfect one, the Buddha. And also when he had left the Buddha, him, for the unknown. How long was it now since he had heard this voice, since he had soared to any heights? How flat and desolate his path had been. How many long years he had spent without any lofty goal, without any thirst, without any exaltation, content with small pleasures and yet never really satisfied. Without knowing it, he had endeavored, this means to work hard to get something, endeavored and longed all these years to be like all these other people. He realizes now what he wanted. He wanted to be like these other people, like these children. And yet his life had been much more wretched and poorer than theirs. For their aims were not his. He had different aims than them. Nor their sorrows his. He didn't feel their sorrow. They didn't have the same goals as him. This whole world of the Kamaswami people had only been a game to him, a dance, a comedy which one watches. Only Kamala was dear to him and had been of value to him. But was she still? Did he still need her? And did she still need him? Were they not playing a game without an end? Was it necessary to live for it? No. This game was called samsara. Samsara is this wheel of life, this wheel of reincarnation, this wheel of action and of need, of striving. This is what the Buddha wanted to cut people off from. But Siddhartha has taken a different way. He's going through the samsara. He's trying to feel and experience what others have. And samsara is a game. It's a wheel. The game was called samsara, a game for children, a game which was perhaps enjoyable, played once, twice, 10 times. But was it worth playing continually? We experience this. We go off and we start our career. It's exciting. We like going out and drinking with people. After a while, it gets old. It gets old. You have to find something that you are passionate about. Then Siddhartha knew that the game was finished, that he could no longer play it, that he could play it no longer. A shudder passed through his body. He felt as if something had died. Remember, he wanted to vomit. Well, in a way, his body is vomiting out all of this game that he was playing. He's given up on it. He sat all that day under the mango tree, thinking of his father, thinking of Govinda, thinking of Gautama. Had he left all these in order to become a Kamaswami? The person that he's following is the seller, the merchant. He sat there till night fell. When he looked up and saw the stars, he thought, I am sitting here under my mango tree in my pleasure garden. He smiled a little. Was it necessary? Was it right? Was it not a foolish thing that he should possess a mango tree and a garden? He had finished with that. That also died in him. He rose, said farewell to the mango tree and the pleasure garden, and he had not had any food that day. As he had not had any food that day, he felt extremely hungry and thought of his house in the town, of his room and bed, of the table and food. They're beckoning him back, calling him back. He smiled wearily, shook his head, and said goodbye to these things. Saying goodbye to everything. The same night, Siddhartha left his garden in the town. That same night, Siddhartha left his garden and the town and never returned. Notice he doesn't say goodbye to Kamala. That's interesting. You should make a judgment on this. Is Siddhartha good? It's a question, right? I've met people like this before. They're great people, but they just leave. It's somewhat sad. He never really felt love. He never really learned to love. For a long time, Kamaswami tried to find him, believing he had fallen into the hands of bandits. Kamala did not try to find him. She was not surprised when she learned that Siddhartha had disappeared. Had she not always expected it? Was he not a samana, without a home, a pilgrim? These are all descriptions of him. Was he not a samana, without a home, a pilgrim? She had felt it more than ever at their last meeting, and in the midst of her pain at her loss, she rejoiced that she had pressed him so close to her heart on that last occasion, had felt so completely possessed and mastered by him. When she heard the first news of Siddhartha's disappearance, she went to the window where she kept a rare songbird in a golden cage. She opened the door of the cage, took the bird out, and let it fly away. For a long time she looked after the disappearing bird. From that day she received no more visitors and kept her house closed. After a time she found she was with child as a result of her last meeting with Siddhartha. So who is that bird? Remember, Siddhartha had a dream about that. The bird is Siddhartha, but now we're seeing it from Kamala's viewpoint. Kamala knew who Siddhartha was. She knew that he couldn't be held. She knew he would leave. Just as she kept a bird in a cage, in a way she had kept Siddhartha in a cage. Not that she had total power, but she had kept him and she wanted to keep him. When he disappeared, she knew that was right, and she let the bird go as well. We all have natures. We all are mysteries to ourselves. And it seems Siddhartha's nature is not to be held down. There are people like this, right? So I think we have 2 more chapters after this. Make sure to like and subscribe. Tell one person about our channel. Ask any questions in the comments, and hit me up on RJK English and we can have further conversation. And tell me why you're reading Siddhartha. Okay? So you're almost done. You're going to have gone through a whole English book. All right? See you later.